Good afternoon. Do you see like Jesus? He saw people and he had compassion on them like sheep, without a shepherd. In Mark, it says, and in that compassion, you remember in Mark chapter 6, there were 5,000 that were hungry, and Jesus saw that need. And in Mark 8, you might remember, he had compassion on them as well, and he didn't want them to travel home hungry. So he fed them again. You know, when you see people, is that how you see? Do you see with compassionate eyes? And that's what we're going to look at this week and next week. For this month, it's going to be the same series here. I think I had Mr. Potato Head up there. I think of him storing away his angry eyes, right? Or do we have angry eyes or bitter eyes or judging eyes or critical eyes? And do we have them stored away and we bring them out sometimes? Or maybe you have merciful eyes or forgiving eyes. Or maybe you have eyes filled with grace and mercy. So we can't see the inside of others as Jesus sees. And we often judge their outside without seeing their inside. And that's why we have to be careful. So anyway, this series there's going to be different perspectives every week. So we're going to take on a whole nother perspective next week that you're going to enjoy. A good time to look at your eyes, or I guess you could say that look at your eyes in the mirror is maybe the ride home from worship. On Sunday, maybe in a discussion with your spouse or your family, what'd you think? And I'm bad about it too, we can ruin a good worship by devouring it ourselves. And I used to hear the joke about how the family had roasted preacher, after services on Sunday. Turn over, if you don't mind, to 1 Samuel chapter 12, or 1 Samuel chapter 1. We're going to be looking at verse 18, so grab a Bible if you don't have one. 1 Samuel chapter 12, or chapter 1, verse 12. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 12. This is a great text. I can't wait to show you this because it's a perfect example of what we're going to be talking about, what kind of eyes you have. Verse 12 of chapter 1 of 1 Samuel. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. And therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, "How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you." But Hannah answered, "No, my Lord. I am a woman troubled in spirit." You remember why she's praying? I'm a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. And then Eli answers and he says, "Go in peace. And the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." Now let's give Eli the benefit of the doubt for a minute. Eli's the high priest, kind of you could say at the judgment seat of all this, and he observes a woman who appears to be or showing the signs of being drunk, and he rebukes her and then tells her to put the wine away. And the story calls to mind something that I think we need to put in our minds and our hearts as we move forward just from this text. Number one is this: your eyes can deceive you. And they often do, right? The Bible doesn't say, don't ever judge. And sometimes the world thinks that that's exactly what Matthew 7 says, and that's not accurate. Matthew 7:1, in fact, is often subtracting the rest of the chapter. We just quote one verse. There's people who just quote one verse. And it says to some people that we should never, ever, ever make a judgment call of any kind, and that's false. That's a little hard to do with other verses, such as, you will know them by their fruits. Well, that's a little hard to make a judgment call, isn't it? Or I think of 2 Timothy 3, where it says the difficult times will come. People will be lovers of self and lovers of pleasure, and rather than lovers of God. And then it ends all those lists by saying, avoid such people. Well, how are you going to do that without making a judgment call? So it would benefit us all to love often, speak little, and remember your eyes only see the outside of people and not the inside. And on the flip side, we've got to remember also people will be quick to see and be judge and jury as well. We've got to be just to have the knowledge that there's people out there and they're going to be judge and jury no matter what you do. So I remember in Acts chapter 2 where the people were filled with the Spirit on the day of Pentecost, and they were accused of what? Right? Being filled with wine as well. So the point I wanted to catch here in this text today, in this lesson today, is number one, do I have all the facts? Do I have all the facts? Are my eyes just seeing the outside? Do I have the facts? Number two, am I harsh at someone without having any of the facts? Or even thirdly, am I coming at someone forcefully without having all the facts? We've got to remember that. The other day, I was walking around here at the new building, and I love being here, by the way, but I was walking in the parking lot and talking to somebody, and here comes this homeless person, and he appeared to be homeless. Now, I want to stop right there for a second. Did you catch me? Appeared to be homeless. Why? And in my mind, I was thinking, well, here's a man, he's probably homeless. And do I have all the facts? No. Well, I was thinking, well, he was walking. He had a backpack. He was pretty scruffy. And I thought to myself, here I'm fixing to teach this week. I should be thinking, as Christ would want us to be thinking, here's a possible open door. But we've got to train our minds to think that way instead of just saying, well, here's a homeless man walking up to the building. And so my mind, even before he got to me, I was thinking, okay, he's probably looking for money. He's probably homeless. I was actually thinking to myself, do I have any cash on me at all? Before he even started to speak. You know what he said? He said, I know, sir. He goes, I know I look homeless, but I actually haven't been homeless for 3 months now. He said, I'm really working hard, and I was just wondering, he goes, I'm walking over here, and I was wondering if you had a cup of coffee. I was wrong. You see how my eyes deceived me? I don't know the inside of people. It might look away, but I don't know the inside. And so we've got to be careful in how we train our minds to think. And a lot of people automatically think negative and pessimistically. You've got to work to think positive. And so we had a cup of coffee, this guy, and we chatted for a while. It was great. Let's go back to Eli for a second, though. I don't want to overlook something. Point kind of a second part of this. And with Eli, we see this too. Am I overlooking my own struggles? You thought about that? I mean, look at Eli. We could go further in this text and see, well, Eli himself kind of is pretty unconscious of the actions of his sons at one point. And that in itself makes me a little more cautious when I come forward at somebody or I think about, they need to be doing this and they need to be doing that. Well, wait a second. Am I overlooking something in my own family or my own life or something that I'm not doing? There's another part of this virus right now that's contagious, you might say. Have you heard about it? It's another strain, another strand. That's pretty scary, isn't it? You know what it is? People are finding their harsh and bitter eyes. That's it. I blame it a lot on the virus, but there are those, because of whatever the difficult circumstances, are becoming extremely harsh and bitter at other people. And is there ever a permission granted by God's word, in God's word, granted permission to say, here, Logan, you can be bitter and you can be harsh at anybody you want to? And there's not. So we have actually passages in 1 Peter 2 and other passages laying aside all the malice, laying aside all the hatred, all the bitterness. And so we've got to remember that. Find your understanding eyes. Back to Hannah. I think, what was her response? She could have said to herself, you know, I might have looked like a drunk lady to Eli. Or maybe I can understand why he thought that. I was, speaking but not really speaking. I was just, maybe she was understanding to that. Another lesson here is with Hannah is that the person that we're watching or judging or condemning, in a sense, might be spiritually moving in a right direction, and we think that they're drunk or that they're doing something wicked. That's why this is such a great passage, because appearances can be misleading. What you see can be misleading. Another thought I was thinking about is it was Eli's struggle, it was Eli's task to see other people's struggles, in a sense, as high priest. So it all gets complicated. And here's what complicates it even more for us, just to be honest with you. This incident with Eli and Hannah happened face to face. You see the difference? This is face to face, conversation to conversation, heart to heart. And Eli concludes it by saying, hey, go in peace. I see you're not drunk. In fact, may the God of Israel grant you what you have requested or petitioning. That's how it ended. But what complicates it is that we often judge from a distance and never say a word to anybody or to that person, or we never ask a question, or we never find out. Most of our judgmental eyes, if you look at it that way, are from a distance. So here's what I want to say for you tonight. Your faith in God and his son Jesus Christ should change how you see others, should change how you give people the benefit of the doubt, should change where you start saying words to each other, whether maybe it's you and your spouse, and you say words like, maybe they don't know. Maybe Logan is not aware of this or that. Maybe Lane or whoever it is, maybe that person doesn't realize. Maybe there's a lot of things going on in their life. Maybe there's things that we don't know. My wife will tell me that sometimes. Well, Logan, maybe there's something we don't know that's going on. Because it's helpful for us to try to change our thinking, but our view and our relationship with God and his son Jesus should change our hearts that way, to give people the benefit of the doubt without knowing all the facts. Another thought that I was considering for this tonight to make sure and mention is, what if Paul in Galatians would have said to the Galatians, well, as long as you do what you feel in your heart, that's going to be okay. Whether you're of Christ or of the Jewish system, as long as you just do what's in your heart. No, he didn't say that. Why? Well, because the why matters. That's why. Just because we take the Lord's Supper every Lord's Day doesn't mean that everybody in our audience is doing it correctly, does it? The why is very important, as 1 Corinthians 11 points out. So we've got to be careful. Just because we think we're right doesn't mean that we can be right. We may be wrong. We can do it wrong. We can do it for the wrong reasons. What kind of eyes do you see with? Is it anger? Is it bitter? Is it harsh? Is it critical? Or do you have merciful, compassionate eyes, giving people the benefit of the doubt? Get in the habit of saying, as we've said before, maybe they don't know. Next week, we're going to talk about a total different perspective on this that you may not have thought about. If you want to read ahead, you're welcome to. I'll give you the passage. This is exciting to me. I actually can't wait for next week. But next Wednesday night, read Romans chapter 1 and verse 20 for next Wednesday night. And we're going to go with a whole nother perspective on changing how we see. Have a great evening.